3FM and 104.3 HD3.
Tough talk. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. That's what the White House has promised when the president holds a video conference with Russia's President Putin on Tuesday over fears that Putin is preparing to invade Ukraine.
U.S. officials have reportedly been putting together a tough sanctions package ahead of that video call between Mr. Biden and Vladimir Putin. However, the White House's plans could well prove to be a bit more bluster than bite. Critics point out that just last month, the Biden administration quietly exempted from mandatory sanctions a Russian-backed vessel involved in the process to win regulatory approval of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline project, a decision they say violates not only the law, it also undermines U.S. efforts to create deterrence ahead of an expected Russian attack.
Fox's Kevin Corke in Washington. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has told Fox News the U.S. is committed to helping Ukraine defend its sovereign territory. About the upcoming Winter Olympic Games in China, American athletes can go, U.S. diplomats will not. The White House announcing a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Games over China's record on human rights. The Justice Department filing suit against the state of Texas again, this time over the way lawmakers redrew the state's congressional boundaries in response to last year's census.
Attorney General Merrick Garland accuses Texas of violating voting rights laws, saying its redistricting plans
deny or abridge the rights of Latino and Black voters to vote on account of their race.
Deputy Attorney General Vanita Gupta pointed to Texas population growth in the last census. She said 95% of that growth is due to minority influx. But with the 2 House seats that come as a result,
Texas has designed both of those new seats to have white voting majorities.
The first lawsuit claims Texas restricts help for people with disability or literacy issues in the voting booth.
Fox's Gernal Scott. America is listening to Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Santa's come in and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
Police and school administrators say a potential school shooting has been averted in South Carolina.
A 14-year-old student is accused of making a threatening statement while on a school bus last week. Another teen claims his classmate at Gilbert High, about 25 miles west of Columbia, was talking about donning a trench coat and opening fire at a nearby elementary and middle school. The unarmed student has been arrested. He's also been suspended from the Lexington School District. The incident comes after last month's deadly high school shooting in Oxford, Michigan. Tom Graham, Fox News.
The prosecutor in Oakland County, Michigan, says she has not yet ruled out filing charges against some in the Oxford School District for failing to take action in the face of warning signs that alleged teenage shooter Ethan Crumbley could be a threat. Crumbley's parents were charged last week with involuntary manslaughter. Honors for a longtime lawmaker, former Kansas Senator Bob Dole's remains will lie in state in the U.S. Capitol Rotunda on Thursday. The Kansas Republican served 36 years in the Senate, died Sunday at the age of 98. The state of Virginia has already removed a massive statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee from Richmond, the former Confederate capital. Now work has begun to take away the giant pedestal on which the statue stood. It's been vandalized and covered with graffiti. It should be gone by midweek. NASA is adding to its astronauts ranks.
The space agency announced the selection of 10 new astronauts Monday as it looks ahead to a return to the moon and a mission to Mars. 6 are men, 4 are women, and half of them are military pilots. More than 12,000 people applied for the coveted spots. The 10 selected now face 2 years of training before becoming eligible for spaceflight. 2 astronauts from the United Arab Emirates will train with them. The previous astronaut selection was in 2017. NASA plans to put astronauts back on the moon no earlier than 2025. Tom Rigotti, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
We buy a homeowner's policy and never give it another thought until something happens. Life brings changes, and our coverage needs can change. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Subway's Eat Fresh Refresh has done it again, serving up yet another new and improved sub, the Cali Fresh Steak, loaded with tender, flavorful marinated steak on top of thick-cut hickory smoked bacon, smashed avocado, and fresh mozzarella. The Cali Fresh Steak is protein-packed to leave you feeling full and satisfied. Cali Fresh Steak is made on our freshly baked hearty multigrain bread layered with fresh veggies of your choice. Subway, eat fresh.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at GuamAutospot.com.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Have I ever said that before on the air?
And each time you say it perfectly.
Yeah, practice makes perfect, I guess. So here we are in another episode of Tall Tales. I'm going to go next straight to Zemi Ikotny. Newcomers need to realize that Zemi Ikotny is my backwards bilingual play on words that translates to the phrase meet the press. It's my interpretation of what a program called Meet the Press ought to be like, a whole lot better than what you're going to see on PMSNBC. I examined the editorials of each of the newspapers. I've got my blue pencil right here. I look for grammatical and English usage errors, faulty theories in the editorials, etc., mark them up. And when I'm finished, if one is the superior, I will award it the coveted Blue Star, which is highly praised in the journalistic community. I start out today with the Daily News, and the headline on the Daily News editorials is, "After decades of talk, it's time to diversify the island's economy." And at the Chamber of Commerce 2022 Economic Outlook Seminar opened on Friday, moderator David John told attendees that he's been on the island for 30 years. And for all that time, he has heard people talk about the need to diversify Guam's economy. Despite the talk, however, the island's economy has not diversified. John, who serves as the chairman of the Economic Development Authority and president of ASC Trust, kicked off a generally optimistic seminar where speakers focused on the good things happening in the island economy. It must have been a short seminar. Construction has picked up. Federal investment is high. There are a number of exciting developments in the real estate world. Yet no amount of optimism could overshow the numbers that came from the Guam Department of Labor and the Visitors Bureau. They showed just how powerful tourism is as an industry and how important it is for the island's economic recovery. Quote, basically what we've endured is really catastrophic, said GVB Vice President Jerry Paris. About 85% of Guam's attractions and activities that were sold in Japan have been shuttered since March of 2020, with 5 closed permanently. Some companies lost 80% of their businesses in 2020 compared with 2019, and have earned no income at all in 2021, Paris said. He said about 3,000 to 4,000 people who worked in Guam's visitor industry have lost their jobs. And while tourism numbers received help from service members who came here for military exercises and international visitors who came for vaccines, the forecast for 2022 visitors' arrivals ain't good. GVB's conservation estimate is 85,000 visitors for fiscal 2022. 85,000 visitors for the whole year, when we used to get 1.6 million. That's with an optimistic estimate of 130,000. The industry estimate is much better at 2,783. Still, is a far cry from 1.6 million visitors who were coming here prior to the pandemic. And as Paris pointed out, although Guam is a relatively safe destination with a high vaccination rate, there are a number of factors beyond our control. The recent emergence of the Omicron variant caused some countries to change travel restrictions. Mandatory quarantine at the traveler's expense and onerous testing requirements place additional burdens on travelers. Would-be travelers who are feeling unsure about their own financial futures or the stability of the economy in their home countries are likely to rethink an international vacation. Bureau of Labor Statistics Chief Economist Gary Hiles said the island's gross domestic product decreased 11.9% in 2020 after increasing 2.5% in 2019. While that's the largest decrease he's ever seen, he said it could have been much worse. Because of the aggressive federal stimulus, both monetary and fiscal, that militated much of what otherwise would have been a decline in the economy that may have been 3 times as large, Hiles said. Still, the collapse of Guam's single large industry, tourism, really dragged down the whole economy, where other sectors increased, Hiles said. Perhaps it is because of the success of the tourism industry over the last 50 years that the island has had trouble diversifying the economy. Whatever the reason, it's clearly time to take action. In 1970, during a groundbreaking for a $20 million airport expansion, Governor Carlos Camacho explained the role tourism would play in the island's future. Efforts to diversify our economy will continue, but tourism will prove to be the essential ingredient for our prosperity, Camacho said. He was right. Now we need to put more energy behind those plans to diversify. How are we going to diversify our economy?
I thought we were going to hear about that in this op-ed.
Really? How about coal mining? No, we can't do coal mining. How about agriculture?
Nope.
No, we don't have enough space for that. Cattle ranch? No.
Nope.
So, once upon a time, we had a tuna fishing fleet here. A lot of tuna fishermen from Yugoslavia. It was kind of an interesting time when we had the tuna boats here down at the harbor. I don't know how much it added to the economy, but it was diversification, and it seemed to be working. But unfortunately, the legislature didn't act fast enough to pass a law forbidding the tuna from swimming away, and sure enough, they swam away. So now we don't have the tuna fishing industry. I don't know exactly what the government of Guam can do in order to diversify the economy. My suspicion is nothing. Get out of the way. Use the tax incentive program called the qualifying certificates to attract industries here that wouldn't come otherwise, perhaps. But you come back to David Ricardo and the rule of comparative advantage. I've explained this before, but business and industry tends to go to the place where it has comparative advantage. In other words, where people can invest money and get the biggest return for it. And the example that I've given is you could raise bananas in Alaska, and you could raise salmon in Ecuador. You could raise bananas in Alaska. You'd need a lot of greenhouses, and it would be some really, really expensive bananas, but you could do it. And you could raise tuna in Ecuador. You'd need some means of cooling the water. And again, they would be really, I'm sorry, not tuna, but salmon. You could do it in Ecuador, but you'd have some really expensive tuna. So the rule of comparative advantage comes in. You raise tuna in Alaska and bananas in Ecuador because you have the comparative advantage. You can raise those things there in a more economic fashion than in other places, and investors are going to have the possibility of making a profit. I don't know that we have a comparative advantage in anything except what we're already doing. You know, we've got sun, sand, and American passports here, American visas here in Guam. If you are a tourist from Japan, you'll get a stamp in your passport that says you visited the United States. A lot of bragging rights goes into that. And we've got our sun and sand. And then we've got our military. And once again, as far as the military is concerned, it's kind of like real estate operators who will tell you that there are three most important things as far as real estate are concerned are location, location, and location. So we're the tip of the spear, the front edge of the shield, the bullseye, whatever. But Guam has been desirable going all the way back to the Spanish times because of its location, military location. Now, we may be able to take advantage of that location for other means. Once upon a time, somebody tried to start a call center here. I don't know how long that lasted. There'd been some talk of even some kind of a stock exchange capitalizing on the difference in time between Asia and New York. We had a company that said we can set up video games here because of our connections, our cable connections, and the faster ping that we have here because of the shorter, in effect, pipes that the signal has to transmit over. But I don't see anything jumping up here and grabbing the spotlight. We talked in terms of captive insurance, which would have made a lot of sense if coupled with our GITA qualifying certificates. All we did was give the local insurance company captive insurance, which accused their tax liability for 20 years. We tried to do foreign sales corporations here once upon a time, and some lawyers and accountants made a little money off foreign sales corporations. Now, as far as captive insurance, what I've read is that Bermuda makes a pile of money off captive insurance and has created a lot of good white-collar jobs. I don't see that happening here. It is, however, a possibility, and we need to put creative people to work on the project, and we need to remember that you don't create anything unless you can attract capital. And I'll give you as an example, Hong Kong. First time I went to Hong Kong in 1964, it was a very picturesque Susie Wong type of place. There was some commerce. It was a good place to have things, shoes and clothing made very cheaply because you know, it was not a booming economy. You go back to Hong Kong now, and it rivals the major cities of the world. And one of the things that helped Hong Kong prosper was that if you are a business, if you're doing business in Hong Kong and you have overseas subsidiaries, when you bring capital back from those overseas subsidiaries, it's not taxed. The United States is one of the only major countries that attempts to tax its citizens on their worldwide income, no matter where they live. So guess what happened? All kinds of capital flowed into Hong Kong. And, you know, you could look at the skyline of Hong Kong as a graph of the capital inflow. A lot of skyscrapers there. So interesting editorial, Guam Daily News, but I'm still waiting.
It's, again, I'm no expert, which means my opinion holds more water than anybody else's. But
yeah,
I think the only way that we grow any economy here on Guam is to get money from outside of Guam.
Of
because
course.
It's not going to happen here. So diversifying is not just a matter of saying we're going to diversify. They're going to have to find something that interests outside money. And it's not going to be domestic stuff. It's not going to be something that generates interest within our local community, which would be nice.
Yeah.
But where's that money going to come from?
Yeah, it has to bring new money into the island or it doesn't help. Otherwise, it's like my example of you mowing my lawn for every week for $10 and I wash your car every week for $10 and we decide we need more profit. So we raise our prices to $20. It doesn't make any difference. Okay, so let's go to the Post. School administrators and educators must get the help they need to keep their cool, even under stress. Over the past few weeks, we've voiced our support for our island educators. Guam's public school educators and administrators in general have been under a lot of stress for almost 2 years now. With Wuhan virus safety mandates and the abrupt return to face-to-face learning for about 24,000 students instead of alternating attendance in 2 groups every other day, the sudden doubling of the number of students at any given time on campuses has been a challenge to say the least. We have great empathy for the education frontliners, also in light of the fact that they have not been treated as generously as other GovGuam employees when it came to Wuhan virus double pay or other additional compensation that recognizes the risk those on the front lines take. Now, what Wuhan virus double pay are we talking? There was no double pay. But we have to say this, under stress or not, educators must keep their civility and composure on campus when children can see and hear how they behave. They are role models for our students. We bring this up following an incident on Monday morning. On Monday morning, we went outside of a middle school campus, just right outside its fence along the road and on a public space, to check out information we received that students formed long lines snaking all the way from the parking lot to the cafeteria for lunch. We wanted to see, were social distancing rules being followed? Were the students standing in the heat to get their food? And what if it rains? Will students be soaking wet before they can put their food in their stomachs? Was there another better way for school officials to handle the matter? Would all the students be able to eat in time for their next class? Part of what we do is listen to community concerns and check out the information we receive. The hope is that we can help shed light on an issue or issues so that corrections or improvements can be made. In the case of a public school concern, the main thing is to see if student safety and welfare are being safeguarded. In the pursuit of checking out information, we kept a distance and made sure we were in a public space outside the school's fence. What followed was a display of an irate administrator's behavior that no student should see or hear. this school administrator was using a megaphone to scold a photojournalist who was just trying to do his job.
You got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
Did they just make the news about them?
Yeah.
Wow.
There are ways the administrator could have handled this differently in a more professional demeanor. This is not the first time we've been addressed with a megaphone at this school. What's the name of the school? Megaphone Heights. Megaphone Tech. But then again, who knows what type of stress the administrator had been under.
Wait, is this not the first time?
Yeah.
Then why didn't they learn from the first time? They just did the same thing they did the first time.
Really. Still, administrators, stressed out or not, must be able to keep their composure when dealing with even the most difficult of situations. Students see their actions and hear their words. We want students to see school officials deal with tension calmly and kindly. Rationality will help kids learn from them. We have hope the incident will result in a positive outcome. There must be more attention paid to the emotional strain educators. Do people pay for this newspaper?
Do people get paid to write this?
Really? They should be afforded some quiet time without getting in trouble with their superiors. GDOE needs to provide a mechanism and more opportunities for educators and administrators to de-stress. The outcome of this incident should include giving educators and administrators the help they need to cope in their pressure cooker environment and for that environment to be better for all. How about this? How about station a couple cops outside the fence and anybody who shows up with a camera will be handcuffed and taken away? Wouldn't that reduce the stress level?
They'd be right about the stress level of journalists and photojournalists.
Yeah. Educators and administrators are the ones who have been advocating for support for emotionally strained students. There should be focus on supporting them and helping them through difficult situations as well. So what we have then is we start out and we say, man, it's really been tough to be a teacher. We've had this Wuhan virus and different kinds of teaching and on and on and on. And then we heard about this long line at the cafeteria. So we wanted to get some good footage. So we sent a photographer up to the school who stood outside the fence the whole time. And then an administrator came out and blew his top. Now, if the administrator blew his top, and he shouldn't have blown his top, you don't need to make excuses for him. As far as you know, he just started work that day and never worked in the school before. He may have just been hired. So this making well, he's under a lot of stress. Helping to help people like that with their stress, and there must be more attention paid to the emotional strain educators and teachers have been under. If they're reaching an emotional boiling point, regardless of what the reasons are, they should be giving it an opportunity to receive support or more of it. They should be afforded some quiet time without getting in trouble with their superiors.
Wow, I'm looking at this as what kind of mixed message, passive-aggressive editorial is this?
Yeah.
Couldn't they have just written a letter to the school? Now they had to make it public?
Maybe call somebody.
Or call somebody there and try to settle this?
Yeah.
But now the kids who were at that school that saw that know who they're talking about.
Uh-huh.
The administrator of that school knows what they're talking about. And this could have been made maybe a little less public because we really don't need to know this.
No.
And I really don't care.
No, the only reason I care is because it's such a crappy editorial.
That's true.
If it weren't, you got my attention here, but, there are other ways of getting my attention besides writing really crappy editorials. And then, to out the guy, out them, and then come back and defend them with BS excuses. Well, they're under a lot of stress and management needs to detect this and let them take a time out. and take their megaphones away from them. Yeah, wow. It must be hard to write these editorials every single day. All right.
It's stressful, Rob. It's stressful.
Very stressful. Yeah. Can we just go off the air for about 10 minutes so I can take a time out without getting a... Don't tell Ray, huh? Yeah, okay, here comes my time out. Thank you.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Afre, my name is Kiona Rivera, student at the University of Guam and recent recipient of the G is for Giving Scholarship. This holiday season, I'm encouraging our island community to support the G is for Giving campaign. Your generous contribution not only support programs at the university, but also helps students like me reach our academic goals. For more information on how you can help shape the future leaders of our island, call the UOG Endowment Foundation at 671-735-2957 or visit their website at give.uog.edu.
Portions of the program brought to you by Nissan. Choose your favorite Nissan, and there's an abundance of Nissan automobiles to choose from. Rogues, Rogue Sports, Muranos, Kicks, Sentras, Lease, Rogues, and then start talking about the deal they want to put together for you. Enjoy 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on them. Just sign and drive away. Inventory limited, so don't wait. See Nissan Guam first. Wait, there's the fine print. I got to read the thing in fine print ease. On approved credit, 3 payments calculated, 5% APR, 60 months term, and based on the actual selling price of the vehicle only, not including down payment or any aftermarket products or accessories. See Nissan Guam for full details.
And now back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
This item on the card kind of comes from the same village as the Post editorial. It's from my friend Jonathan Turley, and the title is The Loki, L-O-K-I, The Loki Effect, How Crime Became the Latest Crisis Blamed on the Pandemic. Crime is raging across the country, from violent attacks to brazen shoplifting to mob smash and grab attacks. The White House this week had a simple answer for the cause of this rising lawlessness. It was not the defend the police efforts or more restrictive policies for police and prosecutors. It was the familiar scourge cited in debates ranging from infrastructure to supply chains to tax increases. The pandemic. The pandemic now seems to have reached the mythical level of gods who once were blamed for everything that went wrong with life. Africans had Anansi the spider, while the Norse had the trickster Loki, L-O-K-I. Both were known to assume different identities to wreak disorder or steal precious things. For politicians, it's useful to have a lurking Loki to explain that social problems are not really of their making and the result of their failures. The Loki factor was evident in the press conference this week when Fox News White House correspondent Peter Doocy,
the best one out there.
Yeah, Steve's son.
Yes.
Steve's son, Peter. Peter Doocy asked about the rising lawlessness seen in major cities such as New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. Quote, does the president still think that crime is up because of the pandemic? White House Press Secretary Jan Psaki Jan's name kind of tells you everything you need to know about her. Jan Psaki replied that many people have conveyed that. Ducey persisted. So when a huge group of criminals organizes themselves and they want to go loot a store, a CVS, a Nordstrom, a Home Depot, until the shelves are clean, do you think that's because of the pandemic? Psaki replied, I think a root cause in a lot of communities is the pandemic, yes. That damned Loki. Whole stores have been ransacked by gangs, and the crime is sweeping large and small businesses alike. At the same time, shoplifting has reached such high levels in cities like San Francisco that stores like Walgreens are closing up due to the losses. Yet some in the media have echoed the spin that such brazen crimes are simply responses to the dire conditions caused by the pandemic. When the CBS Morning News played a clip of a man nonchalantly clearing a shelf of hair care products into a garbage bag and then riding his bike out of a Walgreens, co-host Tony Dokoupil insisted that it seems like an act of desperation. I mean, you're not getting rich off what you take from Walgreens. You're getting probably something you need, like a whole shelf full of hair care products. Yeah, Jean Valjean, right, in Les Miserables, I think he went to prison for stealing hair care products. Wasn't that the...
Maybe there was a bottle of Calgon in there.
Yeah, he was stealing hair care products for his children. I think that's what it was all about.
He was stressed.
Yeah. I don't know the details of that particular case, he went on to say. Indeed, the first priority for most people in a pandemic is to steal dozens of hair care products. It also appears that the pandemic sustenance gatherers felt compelled to grab $79,000 worth of purses from a Givenchy store. Tello was not involved here. You can't blame Tello for this one. Purses certainly do appear to be a COVID necessity across this accessory-deprived nation. When a gang hit Burberry's on the Magnificent Mile, purses at Burberry's store in Chicago, they ran past an assortment of clothing to grab high-priced purses also. Crimes have gotten so bad in New York that the CEO of Bank of America this week sent out suggestions on how employees should dress down and take other survival measures to avoid victimization. Citibank is offering car services to avoid having to walk the streets of the city. Defund the police. Remember George Floyd. For years, many of these cities have been seen calls to defund the police, and many, like New York City, have cut police budgets. Groups like the ACLU insisted that defunding the police will make us safer. And gun violence units have been eliminated. Police practices from pursuit of certain suspects to traffic enforcement have been curtailed or stopped. Prosecutors also have faced policy and legal changes on decriminalization. In public and turnstile jumping. Turnstile jumping means that the New York subway, when you come up to the turnstile, instead of sticking a token in the slot, you just jump over the turnstile. In some cities like San Francisco, police largely stopped responding to shoplifting calls after a state law was changed to make theft of merchandise worth $950 or less just a misdemeanor. So now when shoplifters go into a store, the first thing they take is a pocket calculator. So they can stop at 9:49. There, after the election of District Attorney Shesa Boudin, who is blamed for a sharp decrease in prosecutions. Shesa is a liberal, if you didn't know. In New York, Democrat politicians have pushed through sweeping criminal reforms that include clean slate legislation that would seal criminal misdemeanors after 3 years and felonies after 7. The convictions would later be expunged completely, millions of offenses erased. That includes violent offenses, second chances. We have a second chance law here. While many politicians still call for reimagining policing, that reimagination does not extend to seeing a cause and effect with rising crime levels. Instead, it is the Loki effect of the pandemic. The fact is that most criminals are rational actors who make calculus of risk in the commission of offenses. The mobs hitting stores like Bloomingdale's are organized gangs. Even shoplifters stealing from stores like Costco and Target are known to quickly sell the goods on the internet through fences. In 1968, University of Chicago economist Gary Becker wrote his famous article, Crime and Punishment, in which he argued that criminals make calculations based on the certainty and the severity of punishment. If you increase the certainty or likelihood of punishment, you can achieve deterrence with lower levels of punishment. Conversely, if there is a low detection rate for crime, you can deter some crimes with higher levels of punishment. What is happening in cities like San Francisco is that both certainty and severity of punishment have fallen below deterrence levels. Consider the brazen smash and grabs at malls in the city, in which almost $350,000 worth of goods were stolen. After rising complaints from citizens, the city finally moved aggressively and arrested 14 people. Yet all were immediately released upon processing under no bail laws. If prosecuted, they expect relatively light sentences. For other felons, this is an easy calculation. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in goods can be stolen with low likelihood of capture and a relatively low severity of punishment. It's common sense. It's so easy. But the left will hear none of it. It's just not woke.
Again, it's misinformation and disinformation to fit the narrative. Not that the facts create the narrative. It's that the facts have to fit the narrative, or the narrative have to fit the facts. So never mind that these smash and grabs happened way before the pandemic started.
No.
We have to blame the pandemic.
Absolutely. And never mind that people are stealing stuff that has nothing to do with the pandemic at all. If people were breaking into drugstores and stealing aspirin, I could maybe, I give them a little bit of slack. If they're breaking into a drugstore and stealing hair tonic, I'm not going to give them any slack at all. Okay, then we go from there to Vince Akimoto versus GMH. And Vince says, virus exposed Gov Guam corruption. Last week, Rotterdam descended into an orgy of violence as furious Dutch citizens confronted police and rioted against draconian Wuhan virus measures amidst a surge of deadly Wuhan virus infections. The Wuhan virus chaos in the Netherlands and across Europe threatens to cancel Christmas celebrations. Last month on Guam, a passionate debate about Wuhan virus vaccination between a doctor and his friend deteriorated into a homicide case. Several millennia ago, downtown Bethlehem descended into slumber. There was no room in any inn for a poor carpenter and his pregnant wife. I think I've heard this story before. They had just walked 90 miles from Nazareth to fulfill some draconian government mandate. Mary and Joseph were given a bed with the cattle and the sheep. There, amidst the dung and zoonotic disease, the first Christmas was celebrated. Meanwhile, in Jerusalem, an angry man named King Herod drove his marauding army to slaughter all boys 2 and younger in the region of Bethlehem. Apparently, he didn't want them to participate in any future Christmas parades. From a historical standpoint, Christmas was never a good time to be a child. Migrant babies being born in animal sheds, the politically motivated slaughter of innocent children don't typically make the Yuletide gay. No, Virginia, there never was a red-nosed reindeer named Rudolph, never a singing snowman named Frosty, and the song Let It Go from Frozen is not a Christmas song. We were lied to. Christ's birth is not about fairy dust and toy-making elves. The true story of Christmas is dark and beautiful, and frightening and expiring, and not over yet. Just like Christmas, the story of the now, I'm going to use the term coronavirus because it fits the meter better here. Just like Christmas, the story of the novel coronavirus is still ongoing. As I write this, the virus has killed more than 5.2 million people around the world, and thousands more every day. By Christmas, 1 million Americans will have suffered and died with the COVID infection. We were lied to. Vaccine mandates, forced quarantine, and suspension of civil liberties were never going to save all of us from COVID. Guam needed to have a much better public health system than that which existed when when COVID was diagnosed on the island in March of 2020. Too much of Guam's suffering has been due to the broken health system caused by the local government's addiction to payroll politics. Because of the policy failures in the legislature, robust village outreach to our most vulnerable communities was underfunded and poorly staffed when COVID began killing people. Due to the governor's lack of leadership, coordination between public health doctors and the larger private medical community was disjointed and toxic. COVID exposed the true corruption in the government of Guam. The politicians had used taxpayers' money to enrich themselves and their cronies and left the basic services of the government in shambles. When the governor finally declared a COVID-19 public health state of emergency, no one knew who public health's medical director was. Public health's headquarters in Manila had been declared uninhabitable by the fire department, and the infectious disease laboratory burned down. During the most consequential medical threat to the community, many key politically appointed public health officials quit. But GMH nurses didn't quit, and the deteriorating Guam Memorial Hospital became the epicenter of COVID suffering and death. Nursing and medical staff were pushed to their physical and spiritual limits. Amid leaking roofs and moldy wet towels strewn about the crowded, dirty hospital, they were worried about bringing the infection home. They were scared to hug their kids. They couldn't even kiss mom for fear that the virus might infect those they loved. The governor said GMH was beyond repair and should be abandoned. The hospital administrator said fixing the hospital was useless and Guam should just give up and build a new hospital. The exterior envelope, electrical system, and fire safety equipment were found to be unsafe and beyond reasonable use. The Army Corps of Engineers told the governor that the hospital's life expectancy was another 25 years if the building had been properly maintained. Their damning April 2020 report with explicit photos is a litany of the consequences of deferred maintenance, all in the name of political patronage. Army engineers made clear that even if the decision is made to construct a new facility, immediate repairs to the existing roof, HVAC, and critical life safety items with an estimated cost of $21 million must be undertaken to address the life-threatening infrastructure needed to reobtain accreditation and continue GMH operations safely. And then in the rest of the article, Vince praises the nurses at GMH. But boy, he didn't hold back, did he?
Not at all.
Yeah. So there's a lot there. Let's take a short break here, heading for the big halftime show.
The holidays are here, and you know what that means. Time to gather with family and friends, dress up our homes, and explore Christmas season in paradise. Why not share these moments for a chance to win $100 in cash? Log on to visitguam.com/Instagram today to participate in the Guam Visitors Bureau #Instagram photo and video contest. A winner will be chosen every week, so share your best holiday moments now and win. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
So, will it ever get better? We've been talking about the hospital for the last 58 years, and how we really need to do something. We bring in outsiders to administer it. They usually don't even last a year. One of them left here with criminal charges pending. What was his name? It'll come to me in a minute. Because what happens, apparently what happens is we bring in someone who's going to straighten up the hospital. As my old Aunt Florence used to say, a new broom sweeps the cleanest. Well, a new broom goes in there and wants to cut staff down to reasonable size, and the sweetheart deals that some of the people have. People are going to protect those sweetheart deals, so they get rid of the hospital administrator. See, Bill, what was his name? Come on out there in Facebook land, help me with that guy's name. So the administrator leaves, and we wind up with someone who is pliable and won't upset the apple cart, won't change anything and make anybody mad. So we keep stumbling along the same old path with, no possibility of reform. And people talk about various kinds of effort, but no one has had the political will to actually do it. Now, for me, what we ought to do is we ought to contract with somebody in the mainland. There are an abundance of hospital management corporations in the mainland. Aurora is one that functions in the Middle West. These people know how to run hospitals. So you have a sharp lawyer draw up the contract. You bring these guys out here to run the hospital and tell them, we want you to provide adequate care on at least a break-even basis. And if you can't do that, you're out of here. Our business model here on Guam is to provide inadequate basis, and we never even come close to a break-even basis. So keep on it, Vince. The only way things are going to change, I think, if we have rabble-rousers like Vince Okamoto who keep beating the drum and saying, hey, we can't keep doing this because the people that pay for it are just, the common, ordinary, everyday people of Guam. That looked like a call, Jose.
We have a couple names here. Someone called in and said Bill McMillan. Was that the person you're thinking of?
Yeah, Bill McMillan, yeah. Bill McMillan. Yeah, went in. He was going to cut down the size of the hospital, and he was really going to reform things. And I don't remember what the charge is, but he left here with criminal charges pending. They were ultimately dismissed, but, a nice recruiting tool. Well, wanted one administrator for hospital on Pacific Island, fringe benefits, government of retirement, government health insurance, criminal charges on your way out. Not a very good way to...
Made for a well-rounded experience.
Yeah.
That was way back in the early 2000s, huh? 2006?
Back about that time, yeah. Okay, I've got a next item on the card is The Wire versus Wokesters, but I don't want to start it with just a few minutes left at halftime, so I'm going to take a look at Facebook here and see what I got. I got Colin Clark and Rico Blancafor, Tom Mendiola, Sherry Uriarte is here. Tom Mendiola says 4 pea-brain senators. You got to be more specific with your identification, Tom. I don't know which 4 pea-brain senators.
Which 15 he's referring to.
Yeah, are trying to legislate noise suppressors on guns here on Guam. If they succeed, it's going to increase drive-by shootings. And let's see, William John, can we from now on put William John Shadowin? Let's just call him Utah Bill, right? Utah Bill, yeah, that's a pretty neat name. So Utah Bill is here. He says education should be a comparative advantage if GovGuam would clean up UOG and make it a top-notch university with programs like medical school for doctors. Well, he's on to something, and I've said this before. We have companies that have headquarters in Asia, and we could be, if we worked at it, we could be a very attractive place for companies to locate their headquarters. If our advertisement was, come to an American community with American schools that meet high American standards, and a university that meets high American standards, and a hospital but of course we don't do any of those things.
This sounds kind of weird, strange, but there's a lot of doctors from the Philippines who don't have the same accreditation to practice here in the United States.
Yeah.
Perhaps there could be a transitional school for them, because I knew a lot of nurses in the States who are actually MDs. But from the Philippines.
Yeah.
They're just going through school again so they can receive their certifications and degrees here.
Yeah, good idea, Jose.
We have a market.
Yeah, and we could put them to work in our hospital. Good idea. Let's see. Tom Mendiola says, Jose Martinez, I know, but guns are normally fired at shooting ranges or hunting, but that's why we have ear protections. I don't care if criminals damage their hearing.
I responded to his comment about the suppressors and the pea-brain senators.
Yeah.
The suppressors, from my understanding, and I'm not a firearms, I don't shoot firearms, but from my understanding, they lessen the damaging decibels, but there's still a report, a loud sound that's made.
Yeah.
Not a silencer.
Yeah, only in the movies. Yeah. Yeah, that's what my understanding, that you can put the earplugs in your ear, but there's still a risk of damaging your hearing if you do a lot of shooting. Okay, let's break for the big halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Stay out of Ukraine. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. President Biden expected to deliver that message to Russia's President Putin when the two hold a video conference 12 hours from now. CIA Director William Burns telling the Wall Street Journal's CEO conference President Putin may be feeling emboldened.
He, sees himself in a position of relative economic strength compared to where the Russian economy was a couple of years ago.
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says President Biden is ready with consequences.
The president will be clear, as we have conveyed publicly, that we have been preparing a range of economic sanctions or economic options that could have a detrimental impact on the Russian economy.
Among the options the White House has considered but not yet committed to, cutting Russia off from the international payments system, which Moscow has warned they'd consider to be an act of war. The president has announced a partial boycott of the Winter Olympic Games in Beijing in February. American athletes can still compete, but there'll be no U.S. diplomatic delegation to attend. China's foreign ministry says no one will miss them. The Justice Department has filed suit against the state of Texas, charging state lawmakers were discriminatory in redrawing the state's congressional boundaries.
The department's career voting law experts have assessed Texas's new redistricting plans and determined that they include districts that violate the Voting Rights Act.
Attorney General Merrick Garland, but Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton calls the suit a preposterous attempt to sway democracy. Business owners in New York City say they were blindsided by Mayor de Blasio announcing Monday the city would mandate all private employers in the city compel their workers to be vaccinated against COVID-19.
We need to take very bold action, aggressive action to address these new threats.
The order takes effect 3 weeks from now. Just days before Mayor de Blasio leaves office, court's challenges to the order are likely. City workers in New York are already under a vaccine mandate. America is listening to Fox News.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
We buy a homeowner's policy and never give it another thought until something happens. Life brings changes, and our coverage needs can change. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
A side effect of the coronavirus pandemic, according to a new survey, stress, especially among younger people.
A new study from MTV Entertainment Group and the Associated Press NORC Center finds the pandemic is causing more anxiety and stress for Gen Z, with at least 40% of 13 to 24-year-olds saying the pandemic has made it harder for them to pursue educational and employment opportunities and maintain strong relationships with friends and romantic partners, more so than millennials and members of Generation X. I'm Kevin Cork. Fox News.
A new study by the Cleveland Clinic says even if you didn't come down with the coronavirus, your blood pressure has likely gone up during the pandemic from eating more salty snacks, drinking more, and not getting enough sleep or exercise. In Hawaii, a state of emergency ordered by Governor David Ige. The island's being lashed with a fierce Pacific storm, which the National Weather Service says could produce catastrophic flooding and could also put a damper on Tuesday's 80th anniversary commemoration of the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. The Secretary of the Navy has apologized for tainted water in Honolulu.
Nearly 1,000 military households in Hawaii have complained about cramps, vomiting, and other symptoms, and they believe the source of the trouble is their tap water. That water was tested and found to have petroleum in it. That water coming from an aquifer that sits under a military fuel complex. Navy Secretary Carlos Del Toro held a news conference at Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam to apologize to the thousands of residents and military members
who've been affected
by this horrible, horrible tragedy.
The fuel system shut down for now, and Del Toro said he doesn't think it's going to have much of an impact on military operations. Jill Nato, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Santa's coming and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
Howdy, Chili's is serving y'all some Texas-sized family meal, because everything's bigger in Texas. Enjoy full racks of Chili's world-famous baby back ribs, margarita chicken, savory shrimp, beef fajita, smoked jalapeno sausages, mashed potatoes, and corn on the cob. Man, this meal's bigger than Dallas, but it ain't breaking the bank. Chili's has Texas-sized family meals for just $45 to feed your crew of 3 to 6 folks. For your youngins, just add $5 for a kid's meal. Chili's, more life and bigger meals happen here.
The holidays are here, and you know what that means. Time to gather with family and friends, dress up our homes, and explore Christmas season in paradise. Why not share these moments for a chance to win $100 in cash? Log on to visitguam.com/Instagram today to participate in the Guam Visitors Bureau #Instagram photo and video contest. A winner will be chosen every week, so share your best holiday moments now and win. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at GuamAutospot.com.
Next item on the card is Wire versus Wokesters. And this is something I got from the Daily Wire, which is a Ben Shapiro project. If you don't know who Ben Shapiro is, you're missing out. He is a young, very smart, very articulate conservative who really kind of can lay it out for you. And this is an article in the Daily Wire by a guy named Matt Welsh. And he takes on wokeism with a vengeance. As any parent who has ventured into the children's section at Barnes & Noble knows, the category has become totally flooded by left-wing propaganda, children's books. Every other title on the shelf is Anti-Racist Baby, or I Am Jazz, or Jacob's New Dress. Or Charlie the Unicorn has 2 mommies and 3 daddies, or whatever. A good portion of this agitprop has a racial message, but most of it is focused on gender and identity because the first and primary goal of the indoctrinators is to induct children into the religion of gender ideology. Why is this important? So important? Because I've long argued we're in the midst of a war over truth. These are not scuffles around the edges of truth. We're not fighting over the truth or falsehood of this or that claim. The goal of the leftist, fundamentally, is to relativize everything, relativize reality itself. He wants to be the God of his own life, his own universe. This is how he envisions freedom. This is what he means when he uses the word. Freedom in the sense of being untethered from any sort of objective, defining, or definable force, floating aimlessly in an ambiguous abyss. And this is the goal. There is no better starting point than to undermine biological reality. I'm going to read that again. There is no better starting point than to undermine biological reality. And that's exactly what they're doing. That's what they are doing, biological reality. I'll ask Jose if they agree with me.
I think they do.
And let's see, and there is no better place to start that project than with children who already have a tenuous grasp on reality and will believe pretty much anything you tell them, hence the whole Santa Claus thing. Children have no choice but to rely on adults around them to guide them through the early stages of life. The young of many different species have this need to one degree or another, and sometimes in the lesser species, this vulnerability and reliance puts them in danger. Rats, for example, will sometimes eat their own young. Lions and scorpions will do the same. Humans have a more ideological version of this. Helpless children are devoured by leftist indoctrinators. The predator feeds upon the innocence of the child, exploits it, uses it to his own advantage. This is going on everywhere, especially in the books and shows and other forms of entertainment made for kids these days. For a long time, conservatives have essentially surrendered this ground to the left, like it had surrendered almost everything else, allowing the left to turn children's books into vehicles for this cult-like brainwashing without offering any response or alternative. But it's time for that to change, which is why I have finally embraced my true calling as a children's author and written my first work of children's literature. It's called Johnny the Walrus. It's difficult to summarize the book because it's a lengthy story of some 400 words across 30 cardboard pages. It took me many laborious months to write. Countless nights were spent hunched over my typewriter, honing and crafting this work of literature. In brief, it's a story about a creative and imaginative young child. Like most children, he likes to play pretend. One day he pretends to be a walrus. He even has wooden spoons in his mouth like tusks and socks on his hands like fins. But unfortunately, his mommy is confused and impressionable sort, and she learns from the internet that if your child identifies as something, then he must actually be that thing. Johnny's mommy spends the majority of the story trying to raise her child according to his walrus self-identity. She does her level best to give her trans walrus son the sort of walrus life she thinks he wants and needs. At the darkest point in the novel, she brings him into a purple-haired doctor who recommends he takes the medication and undergo rather barbaric surgical procedures to complete his walrus transition. Over time, though, Johnny's mommy comes to understand that just because a child pretends to be something doesn't mean he actually is what he's pretending to be. On second thought, The summary was longer than the book itself. Forget about summaries and buy a copy for yourself and 20 more for your closest friends and family members. So, very interesting. You know, and of course, you know exactly what he's aiming at. The child comes home, Johnny comes home, and he says, you know, Mom, I'm really Joni. And nowadays, parents go to great lengths to turn Johnny into Joni. And anyone who says boo about it is a transsexual phobe.
One of the growing things that's happening in that community is the number of those who go through reconstructive surgery and then end up regretting it or going through a deeper depression because that's not what they had in mind.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, you wonder. You know, the old saying is, you live long enough, you're liable to see anything. And I never thought I'd see any near the idiocy that goes on today when I was a young man.
Especially when it comes to children.
Yeah.
I mean, kids are not really supposed to make up their minds about dinner, let alone their gender.
Yeah, but of course, as the author, as Matt Walsh points out, there is no better starting point than to undermine biological reality. If you can get people to believe these fairy tales, I'm using that word advisedly, these fairy tales about biology, you can convince them anything, that a man can become a woman, or that a man can have children, or that two men can enter into a marriage. If you can convince people of these basic biological facts, then the Brooklyn Bridge for $100,000 would be a really easy sale. All right. So much for Matt Walsh. Next on the calendar, I've got BLM versus useful idiots. Does corporate America regret embracing blatantly racist BLM? And of course, I could change the title of this. Does Tom Shea regret embracing blatantly racist BLM? Of course, the answer is probably not. Tom Shea is more interested in embracing Tom Shea. At the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement in 2014, critically thinking people were skeptical of the group's intentions. Was the organization truly interested in protecting black communities from harm? Or did it plan to tear down and replace the capitalist system, one that has lifted billions of people around the world out of poverty? We got our first glimpse of the BLM philosophy in a video featuring co-founder Patrisse Cullors. In it, she calls herself a trained Marxist. Quote, the first thing I think is that we actually do have an ideological frame, Cullors said during an interview with the Real News Network. We are trained Marxists. We are super versed on sort of ideological theories. Despite stores across the country being looted and burned last summer, resulting in $2 billion in damages in mostly peaceful demonstrations, according to CNN. And the most expensive rioting in U.S. history, corporate America was happy to appease the violence in the movement. Company after company released virtue signaling statements and donated $90 million to the organization. Some even donated to the Minnesota Freedom Fund, a BLM ally infamous for bailing murderers and rapists out of jail. Cullors was cashing in and quickly purchased 3 different homes, one of which is in a predominantly white neighborhood in L.A. She claims none of the money used for her real estate empire came directly from the organization, but audits and access to the group's finances have been limited. As protests broke out across the country in the name of Black Lives Matter, the group's co-founder went on a real estate buying binge, snagging 4 high-end homes for $3.2 million in the U.S. alone, according to property records. The New York Post reported in April, Patrice Kahn Cullors, 37, also eyed property in the Bahamas at an ultra-exclusive resort where Justin Timberlake and Tiger Woods both have homes. The Post has learned luxury apartments and townhouses at the beachfront Abbey Resort outside Nassau are priced between $5 million and $20 million, according to a local agent. The self-described Marxist last month purchased a $1.4 million home on an exclusive road a short drive from Malibu in L.A. Cullors resigned from the organization over the summer, but her radical ideology remains. Now BLM is encouraging Americans to boycott white-owned businesses ahead of Christmas and calling the current economic system white supremacy capitalism. Black Christmas challenges us to shake off the chains of consumerism and step fully into our own collective power to build new traditions and run an offensive as well as a defense. Let's harness our economic power to disrupt white supremacist capitalism and build black community. Black Christmas is about being self-determined and dismantling existing structures by building new and more viable, beneficial ones. In the names of our mightiest and most righteous warrior ancestors. BLM posted on its official website. Move your money out of white corporate banks that finance our oppression and open accounts with black-owned banks, it added in an Instagram. Not only is BLM an anti-American movement, it is a deeply racist one. Its mission is in stark opposition to e pluribus unum. Calls to boycott certain businesses because their owners happen to be white shouldn't be tolerated. It isn't acceptable to discriminate against any business owner based on race. Now that it's clear corporate America got fleeced and embraced a blatantly racist organization, will its leaders broadly regret their support for BLM? That's unlikely. After all, they're also happy to be in on the grift. Yeah. Black Lives Matter. Okay, here's my next item here. Black Lives and Antifa versus cops. 2021 saw the most police officers shot and killed in U.S. history, according to the Fraternal Order of Police. The National Fraternal Order of Police, the oldest and largest police union in the United States, said that in 2021 is already the bloodiest year in the history for American law enforcement officers. As of Tuesday, the National Fraternal Order of Police reported that 314 police officers shot in the line of duty, 58 of whom were killed. There were 42 cops shot in Texas, 25 in Illinois, 21 in California, 17 officers shot in both Florida and Georgia. Despite a month to go in the year, 2021 is already the deadliest year on record for police officers, according to FOP. Another disturbing trend is there were reportedly 95 ambush-style attacks thus far in 2021, a 126% increase compared to 2020. The ambush attacks resulted in 119 officers being shot, 28 who lost their lives. We are on a pace this year to see the highest number of officers shot in the line of duty in 1 year ever recorded, FOP President Patrick Yo said on Wednesday. We've already had more officers killed in the line of duty by gunfire this year than any other, and there's still 1 month left. There is no doubt that the recent erosion of respect for law enforcement has fueled more aggression towards cops than what has been seen in previous years, Shows added. As violence continues to be aimed at law enforcement, our officers continue to show up every day to keep the communities they serve safe. These men and women run toward danger to protect the public when everyone else is running away. The National Order of Police called on Congress to pass the Protect and Serve Act, legislation reintroduced by 17 Republican lawmakers in March that would create federal penalties for individuals who deliberately target local, state, or federal law enforcement officers with violence. The FOP demanded Congress must act now to address the terrible violence targeting our law enforcement officers and pass the Protect and Serve Act to better protect the brave men and women who wear the badge. The FOP blamed rogue prosecutors, guys like Chesa Boudin, refusing to prosecute violent criminals for the rising crime across the country. The group also called out media members for not covering increasing crime rates. Those saying that America's crime crisis is not out of control are either not paying attention or trying to cover for rogue prosecutors pushing radical policies. To the various media folks who've been turning a blind eye to the killings in our streets, do your damn job. The FOP also blamed activist judges for contributing to the historic crime wave by releasing violent criminals on probation with low bail or no bail. The U.S. murder rate skyrocketed 30% from 2019 to 2020. Now, we know the reason for that, right? The pandemic, Loki. In September, the FBI published similar findings that homicide jumped by 30%. Let's see here. Philadelphia has reached 512 murders, surpassing the 500 homicides that was said in 1990. Washington, D.C. has recorded 205 homicides, surpassing the 200 for the first time since 2003. Portland set a new record for homicides. In September was 67. So it's really clear to me what's going on. Black Lives Matter, Antifa have made violence in the streets an acceptable undertaking. And mainstream media like CNN and mostly peaceful demonstrations have covered for them all the way. So the media cartel is covering riots in cities like Portland and Chicago and calling them peaceful demonstrations. And people are saying what we need to do is do away with the police departments. That's the way to cut down on crime. So, you know, it's a wonder that more cops haven't been shot than have been already. And wait till next year. If we keep going the way we're going, you know, it's going to be open season on police out in the street. Not a very nice picture. We have kind of something very similar to that going on right here. Let's head for Chicago in the seventh inning stretch.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Portions of the program brought to you by Nissan. Choose your favorite Nissan, and there's an abundance of Nissan automobiles to choose from. Rogues, Rogue Sports, Muranos, Kicks, Sentras, Leafs, Rogues, and then start talking about the deal they want to put together for you. Enjoy 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on them. Just sign and drive away. Inventory limited, so don't wait. See Nissan Guam first. Wait, there's the fine print. I got to read the thing in fine print ease. On approved credit, 3 payments calculated, 5% APR, 60 months term, and based on the actual selling price of the vehicle only, not including down payment or any aftermarket products or accessories. See Nissan Guam for full details.
Next item on the card, Cabrera versus GPD. This comes from Candid. This goes back to last Friday, and this story is still perking along. Candid headlines it like this. Witness said aggressive cop has been shooting in neighborhood and needs help. Jamie Pangilinan Cabrera lives across the Ipoh Estates cul-de-sac from a high-ranking police officer seen in a viral video pointing what appears to be an assault rifle at neighbors. You seen that video, Jose?
I have seen stills. I haven't seen the video.
Okay. He's been shooting over there and threatening us, Ms. Cabrera told Candid in an exclusive interview. She said this was not the first incident where a confrontation erupted. A few days prior to this week's viral incident, neighbors called police to respond to the officer's alleged aggression. When police officers arrived, according to Cabrera, they told her and her boyfriend they could not arrest the officer because they were subordinate to him. They said the only way they can help us is if we go to internal affairs, Ms. Cabrera said. Certainly the chief of police isn't going to help you, because this guy may be one of the cops who was doing routine patrol checks on the chief's motorcycle. The Guam Police Department issued a statement last week confirming an IA investigation into a police officer stemming from allegations of terrorizing. Ms. Cabrera and other sources have confirmed that this is the same police officer. What is seen in the viral video is the second incident. They should investigate him. He's so aggressive, she said. I think the guy needs help. A criminal complaint has been taken and forwarded to the Office of the Attorney General. They are handling the investigation, acting police spokesman Berlin Savella told Candid. So what would happen if the average citizen is out brandishing an assault rifle in front of his house? Interesting story, and there's a lot more to it, and I think a lot of the details are going to come out. As soon as I get a hold of them, we'll talk about it more here on Tall Tales. And, going through some of the stuff that has been on the calendar for a while that I didn't get to before. This is Turley versus the media cartel. Rittenhouse revisited: how media misinformation can fuel social unrest. This is what he says. The full acquittal of Kyle Rittenhouse is now in. The result was hardly a surprise to many of us who watched the trial rather than the media coverage. The jury spent days carefully considering the evidence and could not find a single count that was supported beyond a reasonable doubt. In rendering its verdict, the jury fulfilled its core function in our legal system. The jury was designed to protect an individual from becoming the grist of a criminal justice system. As the Supreme Court noted in Duncan versus Louisiana, providing an accused with the right to be tried by jury of his peers gave him an inestimable safeguard against the corrupt or overzealous prosecutor and against the compliant, biased, or eccentric judge. The American jury is designed to stand between a mob and a defendant, between the government and the accused. The thin line of a dozen citizens can prove the most unassailable wall for justice in our system. There was, however, a second verdict in that courtroom for those who have been maintaining a distorted or incomplete account to this trial. From the outset, politicians and media figures insisted this was a case of murders committed by a white supremacist. Then presidential candidate Joe Biden labeled Rittenhouse a white supremacist in a tweet showing his photo and demanded to know why then President Donald Trump did not disavow white supremacists. Much of the media followed suit with an echo chamber of coverage that led some people to believe that these were essentially executions on the streets of Kenosha. Columnist Ellie Mistel called the trial a sham. The pressure clearly had an impact on the prosecution, which overcharged Rittenhouse. The case began to fall apart as the prosecution called in witnesses who contradicted the core elements of these charges. What happened next was even more chilling. Faced with a collapsing case in court, many of the same media outlets struck out at the judge, the jury, and the legal system. MSNBC host Tiffany Cross advocated for the judge's removal. Rittenhouse was mocked for his male white tears on national television. Georgetown law professor Paul Butler called the trial white privilege on steroids. The danger of such reckless legal analysis is now evident. Judging from the coverage, one could easily conclude that a conviction in this case was inescapable. Many reports prioritized still pictures of Rittenhouse walking menacingly with his rifle and omitted many of the countervailing facts that occupied much of the trial. Many viewers may not have learned that Rittenhouse spent his time cleaning graffiti off the high school. Most people seem to disagree with the decision of Rittenhouse and others to show up at protests armed. However, many also perceive the elect victims as rioters who were engaged in violent acts, including attacks on Rittenhouse. In our siloed society, people rely on news sources that tend to confirm their bias and presuppositions in such trials. The problem is that such coverage is self-fulfilling. Yeah, so, we spent a lot of time talking about the Rittenhouse trial, how racist it was, and once again, if you say that you are not a racist, you get caught in the Kafka trap. Because anyone who denies being a racist is obviously a racist, otherwise he wouldn't deny it. So I went through this once before, but I think it's worth repeating. When I was a youngster, this is what I was taught about racism. Racism consists of stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination. You start out with a stereotype and you say that all white people are whatever, dishonest. And then because white people are dishonest, we shouldn't, we should be very careful around them. We should be leery in their presence, etc., because they're not honest. And then the discrimination comes in and we should discriminate against white people because they're not honest. That's how I was taught racism worked. So the way that you would not, to avoid being a racist, don't engage in the stereotypes. Don't judge people based on the stereotype, and don't discriminate against people based on the stereotype. Everybody's an individual and should be dealt with as an individual. That's what I was taught. If I were to say that in front of Patrice Cullors or any of the BLM Black Lives Matter folks, or maybe Tom Shea, I don't know, he would say, "You're a racist." If you don't want to be a racist, you have to be an anti-racist. And in order to be an anti-racist, you must understand equity, inclusion, and diversity. Diversity means that we have to make sure that we remember that everything in our society is governed by race. And that because everything is governed by race, we must make sure that there is a diversity of races across the board. So if 13% of the people in a city are African American, 13% of the people on the city council had better be African American, and so on. That's what diversity means. Inclusion means basically the same thing. You have to include people not based on skill, effort, ambition, etc., but only based on race. And then equity. Equity has replaced the word equality in our vocabulary. Equality means that a system that's governed by equality, everybody gets to start with a fair chance at the beginning. We're all equal at the beginning, and where we finish is basically up to us. Equity is the exact opposite. It's where you finish. So by combining inclusivity and diversity with equity, there have to be as many people of the different races succeeding as there are in the population, because there's no other explanation for the shortfall in numbers other than racism. So that's kind of where we are today with race. Let's see, I got somebody waiting to get out of the green room here. It's Repeat, and he wants to talk about violence against law enforcement. Tell us more, Repeat, and tell us again.
Hi, Uncle Bob.
Hi.
I was just going to ramble about, when I left law enforcement in 2001, things were a lot different back then. And, of course, that was right before 9/11, however. And right after 9/11, law enforcement enjoyed really good popularity with the public. But before that, I had studied criminal justice as my major. And there were a lot of ethical issues and systemic problems that we dealt with and studied, right, for my degree. And looking at that, or taking that, what we discussed in theory in the classroom, and then also applying it to what I had experienced in practice, one of the things that I had, I guess, developed was a sense that, at the time, it probably hasn't changed though. At the time, there were some bad apples. And those bad apples, if left unchecked, was going to cause problems for the rest of the good officers. And that, because I wrote a thesis or a paper on this, that the good officers, the rest of the officers that are not bad apples, needed but weren't forcing out the bad apples. And it was going to return to haunt them. 99.9% of the law enforcement force are good, and good people, good, honest, hardworking people that put their life on the line. However, there's a culture for law enforcement to protect their own, whether good, bad, or indifferent. And that my theory was that was going to end up biting them in the butt and causing problems for the majority of good officers, and that it was incumbent upon the good officers not only to or to not just stand by and allow it to happen, but also to be proactive and actually weed it out. And that would be the only way for the problem not to come around and bite them in the butt. Sort of like a cancer, right? You find a tumor, you get it cut out. Otherwise, if you just keep protecting it and babying it, the tumor is going to spread, or the tumor is going to end up affecting a vital organ and end up killing you. So, what we're seeing, I think, is I'm not justifying it or saying it's acceptable. I'm just observing that, it's a symptom of decades of whether real or just perceived police brutality and the sense of the public that they weren't getting justice. And so this is the backlash. It's not the proper way for them to deal with it, but it is the reality that, this backlash wasn't just something that spontaneously happened. Something had to precipitate this. And my theory was that, if the bad cops were left unchecked and not punished and not brought to justice, it could fester enough to cause an eruption. And here we are 20 years later, and it seems like that's coming to fruition.
When did you start at GPD, Pete?
93.
93.
And then I left in June of 2001, and then, of course, September 11 happened in 2001. But I was already active duty at that time.
You left a little too early because I left in 93.
Yes, yeah.
So,
but so I don't know. I think it's a symptom. It's definitely an issue that needs to be addressed, and hopefully the best policymakers can come up with viable solutions. But right now it's untenable. It's I'm afraid for my 4 boys that live in the States. Not just from law enforcement, but from they just might be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, the society has become very violent, hasn't it?
Yes. I just want to throw my 2 cents out there. The folks that are I guess feel like they're oppressed. They didn't just wake up one morning and say, "Oh, we're oppressed." Something had to precipitate that. Something had to push them into the corner like that. It also has to do too with modern attitudes of entitlement and not wanting to work for anything. I mean, all of it contributes. There's definitely a degradation in respect and honor and integrity that I see in the younger generation.
You wrote a letter to the editor about that, didn't you, Pete?
Yeah, we'll repeat it one day.
Yeah, one day. Well, I appreciate your contributions, Pete. You always lend an interesting voice to the show. So thanks a lot for calling.
All right. Have a great night.
So long. Okay, let's head for Churchill Downs.
My name is Kiona Rivera, student at the University of Guam and recent recipient of the G is for Giving Scholarship. This holiday season, I'm encouraging our island community to support the G is for Giving campaign. Your generous contribution not only support programs at the university, but also helps students like me reach our academic goals. For more information on how you can help shape the future leaders of our island, call the UOG Endowment Foundation at 671-735-2957 or visit their website at give.uog.edu.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations,
local, and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
So here we are, Churchill Downs. That means we're in the home stretch here at Tall Tales. I've got about 10 more minutes to go to the end of the show today. I'm going to wrap the show up talking about abortion, but I noticed something on Facebook here during the break from Janice R. Jackson Garrido, who said, would you find out whatever happened to the All Rise money that's supposed to come for the, I think she means from the legislature, for us who choose to opt out of the governor's All Rise plan, please. I don't know that anyone had let me see here. The governor had an All Rise plan, and if you opted out of it, it means you just didn't apply for that money.
I didn't see the application, but I recall there was I'm remembering the conversation this morning. It's not a disclaimer, a caveat, or a little paragraph in it that you agree to not apply.
Let's not get ahead of the story here. I don't recall any way of opting out of the governor's All Rise plan. The way you opted out of the governor,
you didn't apply.
You just didn't apply.
Right.
So if you didn't apply, you're not going to get any money. Yeah. Okay, and then from there, we go to the other part of her question, which is, can you find out whatever happened to the All Rise monies that's supposed to come from the legislature? Well, that program was stillborn because it was overcome by events, by the All Rise program. So no money ever came from the legislature for their All Rise program. We started out with All Rise. The governor allowed it to become law without her signature. She never paid any money out of it. The money that was supposed to fund the All Rise program was the money she got from the feds. She said, I'm not going to spend my money on that. Later on, instead of spending her money on that, she created her own program called the All Rise program, which she would use her own money on. And if you had to apply in order to get money out of that program, and when you applied, there was a form for you to fill out where you waived any right to any other compensation, like the legislature compensation. And I explained that on Tall Tales as to why that made sense to me, because one of the things that a good administrator tries to do is minimize litigation. So even though that program was never funded and never implemented and never got off the ground, there wouldn't have been anything to stop someone who got money from the All Rise program to hire some lawyer who would turn around and make a government claim based on the RISE Act, money from the legislature, which probably wouldn't have gone anywhere, but the transactional cost would have been significant. So Janice R. Jackson Garrido, if you didn't apply for the governor's All Rise program, you're not going to get any money out of that, and you're not going to get any money out of the legislature's RISE Act either. So I hope that answers your questions. Okay, next, I mentioned this earlier that Turley had written up a pretty good workup on the abortion case before the Supreme Court. I never got to it. Now I'm finally getting to it. The Supreme Court is on the eve of, and he wrote this before the arguments, in what could be the most consequential abortion case in decades, Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. For years, many analysts overhyped cases as possible death knells for Roe versus Wade, despite annual columns questioning such apoplectic apocalyptic. Yeah, apocalyptic predictions, which often seem more political than legal. The granting of Dobbs led me to write my first "This Could Be It" column. Dobbs has everything that would need for Roe killing case. That does not mean the court will do so, but it could substantially reduce Roe's hold over states. The more interesting question is not whether Roe will go, but whether viability is still a viable basis for limiting states on abortion legislation. There's no constitutional question that has left more lasting, continuing divisions in society and on the court, which is the reason that the court should never have decided this. And I've explained this before. The best way to handle complex issues is in a legislature. Legislatures are built to reach consensus on conflicting viewpoints and controversial issues, and to work out something perhaps that nobody wants but that everyone can live with. Legislatures are manufacturers of consensus. Courts produce only winners and losers. So we've had half the country has been losers, half the country has been winners, and the battle goes on and will go on forever until Roe and Planned Parenthood versus Casey are overruled and the matter goes back to the states. So these questions can be handled in state legislatures. And for either side, you know, if your position on abortion is so correct and so easily understood, then you shouldn't have that much trouble convincing a state legislature that you're right and the other side is wrong. 48 years ago, the court held in Roe that the right of personal privacy includes the abortion decision, something that is outside the Constitution. But this right is not unqualified and must be considered against important state interests and regulation. The court embraced a trimester system of escalating state authority, with little such authority in the first trimester, but considerable authority, including possible bans, in the third trimester when a baby is viable outside of the womb. Then, in 1992, a deeply fractured court upheld the essential holding of Roe, but a plurality dispensed with a trimester approach in favor of the current viability standard. Under this approach, a state could protect the potentiality of human life through legislation once a fetus has reached viability, except where it is necessary for the preservation of the life or health of the mother. That line was viewed as around 23 or 24 weeks. The United States is one of the only 7 countries in the world's 198 countries that allow for abortions after the 20th week of pregnancy. So we're the outliers here. Since then, abortion has remained a matter of deep division. Indeed, the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, once a critic of Roe, seeing it as too sweeping and supplanting state laws. Now, if Ruthie says that, who can argue? She later blamed the case for reversing the trend toward more pro-choice states. To uphold Roe, the court likely will require more than the usual arguments of stare decisis, the doctrine that the court should generally stand by its precedents. Pro-choice members and advocates have insisted that Roe is a super precedent, that it cannot be set aside like other cases. Worth noting is that senators denouncing even the thought of overturning Roe's judicial activism have demanded overturning cases like Citizens United and Heller. I guess we're at the end here. I'll mark this place and the decision. I'll come back to it tomorrow. We'll wrap it up for today with the usual, let's go, Brandon. See you tomorrow.
Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Sanctions are ready. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. When the two men hold a video conference this afternoon, the White House says President Biden will warn Russia's President Putin of economic repercussions if he invades Ukraine.
The White House has been making clear that they've been speaking to their allies about a set of sanctions that would, in their words, make significant and severe harm to the Russian economy should they need to take those moves if Russia chooses to invade Ukraine. So the White House said that they don't know if Putin has made a decision, but if he hasn't, there's an opportunity to have a conversation about a range of topics where there can be mutual interest. U.S. officials are reportedly zeroing in on sanctions against Putin's inner circle and on Russian energy producers and banks.
Fox's Jackie Heinrich at the White House. CIA Director William Burns telling the Wall Street Journal's CEO conference on Monday he's not sure that Putin has made up his mind to invade, but he'd never underestimate Putin's appetite. President Biden has ordered a diplomatic boycott of the Winter Olympic Games in Beijing. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says American athletes will compete.
I don't think that we felt it was the right step to penalize athletes who have been training, preparing for this moment, and we felt that we could send a clear message by not sending an official U.S. delegation.
China's foreign ministry warning the boycott could hurt dialogue and cooperation in important areas between the U.S. and China. The Justice Department suing the state of Texas. Attorney General Merrick Garland says state lawmakers have violated the Voting Rights Act
by creating redistricting plans that deny or abridge the rights of Latino and black voters to vote on account of their race, color, or membership in a language minority group.
Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton posting on social media the lawsuit is absurd. America is listening to Fox News.
Jason in the House, the Jason Chaffetz podcast. There is always someone doing something stupid somewhere. Dive